The US and Russia have agreed to exchange jailed US basketball star Brittney Griner for notorious arms dealer Viktor Bout, held in an American prison for 12 years. The swap was approved by President Joe Biden in recent days. Sources have told CBS. Griner was arrested at a Moscow airport in February for possessing cannabis oil and last month sent to a penal colony. Well, let's go straight to our Barbara Plett-Usher. And Barbara, we're just hearing this breaking news that the basketball player Brittney Griner has been released, and we're expecting to hear from President Joe Biden shortly.
Yes, the news is just coming in, so we don't have a great amount of detail, but we know that this has long been in the works, these negotiations with the Russians to arrange a prisoner swap for Brittney Griner. The Secretary of State actually made the unusual step of announcing publicly last July that the Americans had put a substantial proposal forward for Ms. Griner's release, and they have been sort of saying since then that they haven't been getting much response and that there has been stonewalling and slowness on the Russian side. But this has now obviously just come through. We understand that Brittney Griner is with American officials and the prisoner swap is being dealt with now. This is the Russian arms dealer, Viktor Bout, very notorious arms dealer for decades, sold weaponry to rogue states, warlords in Asia, Africa, and South America. He was arrested in a U.S. sting in 2008 and is serving time in a U.S. prison. So that is one prisoner that the Russians were quite eager to get back. That is something a Russian official actually said quite clearly a few weeks ago. Ms. Griner's case is a bit unique because Americans have been working with trying to get hostages home for years in different countries, different types of negotiations, but she's a celebrity. She's a well-known basketball player. And so her case here got some traction and really sort of galvanized a movement of families who also are trying to get their loved ones home. And one of the people who the Americans were trying to get back along with Brittney Griner is Paul Whelan, a former Marine who has been charged with espionage and is serving 16-year sentence in a penal colony in Russia. And they were negotiating to get the two of them back together in exchange for Mr. Bout. But we understand from initial reaction from the family's group that he was not included. We are waiting to get more information about that. As you said, the president is going to be speaking shortly.
Indeed, and I'm just seeing here an alert that President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken have spoken by phone with Griner, and they say she's in good spirits. So that's just come out now. Reuters has reported U.S. officials are saying that. Do we know much about where Viktor Bout is right now, whether he is with Russian officials?
We don't have details of the prisoner swap, Yelda. I mean, I've seen some reports that the swap is going to take place in a Middle Eastern country, but we can't confirm yet about the timing and the details of how that happened. But if Brittney Griner is with American officials, we can expect that it's pretty much ongoing right now. She had been sentenced to 9 years in the penal colony. After a trial, she was convicted and sentenced. Then there was an appeal, which was rejected, and she had actually just been sent to the colony to start her sentence. And we had been told at the State Department that there was difficulty getting in touch with her, that Russian officials were not that forthcoming in terms of her whereabouts and access and so on. So it's something that's been frustrating people here. But clearly, alongside that, these negotiations were gathering steam, and she's now been released.
Yeah, and I'm just going to hang on to you for a little while longer, if I can, Barbara, because we are waiting for that press conference with President Biden to happen shortly. But I'm also seeing a tweet here that Reuters has put out saying that President Biden says that, as I said, he has spoken with Griner. She's safe on a plane and on her way home. So things moving quite quickly.
Yes, the news of these things doesn't come out until everything is organized. So I think we expect her to arrive home fairly quickly, and as you said, Mr. Biden will be speaking shortly. This is something that the administration has said continually is a priority, to get detained Americans home. And there was a question about Ms. Griner because she was arrested just before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when relations with Russia fell to a pretty low point. Also, she's a celebrity, so she's well known, and her case perhaps may have made the Russians think that they could bargain for more. So there was always a question about how long this would take and what the outcome would be. But then in April, another American detainee in Russia was released under a prisoner swap agreement, and that really inspired hope in Brittney Griner's family, as well as in the families of the other detainees that are held in different countries around the world. And especially it inspired hope with Paul Whelan's family. There was a real effort to get him to come out with Ms. Griner. But again, we don't have very much information about that, but initial reports are that he's not along with her.
Yeah, as you say, Barbara, I mean, this whole case really came to prominence because of the fact that Brittney Griner is so well known, but also it really coincided with the war in Ukraine, which kind of complicated a lot of things.
Yeah, it made the negotiations more difficult. I mean, these negotiations are always difficult. The administration has created a position of an ambassador or an envoy, I suppose, to deal with detainees. And what he says about negotiations is the other side always wants something. You have to listen to what they're saying, figure out what you can do to kind of meet what they want, and then, but they have a vote. And the Russians had a strong vote in this case. Certainly the geopolitical climate was very unfavorable to some kind of deal. So it's interesting that since the invasion of Ukraine and the very tense relations between the U.S. and Russia, there have been now 2 prisoner swaps, even despite those tensions. So it does seem as if this channel can operate separately.
Yeah, very much so. Really fascinating. Barbara, thank you so much. We will come back to you as soon as that press conference begins. But thank you so much for bringing us up to date there.